Welcome into the second edition of video and audio. If you're not watching this, it's also audio for the Friday Patreon show being recorded on a Thursday night. If you want the sausage making here, but for the first time this year, I have a guest with me. On normally, I just say it's your host John, and Ted is off doing whatever he does with his free time on Friday nights and Thursday nights. But today we have Matt Hilliard, writer of All Points Bulletin. Matt, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
And if you're wondering what is All Points Bulletin, you will likely have seen his very extensive, work on Reddit. That's where I saw it first, and then I followed him on Substack. So if you're on Substack, go follow him right now. Get subscribed. If you're not, join Substack. I guess is what I'm telling you to do. If you're not on Substack, join it for this very reason. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I don't think you have to join. I think you can just drop your email address in there. You don't have to do anything.
There you go. No password. Don't have to create a password. All right. Anyway, So All Points Bulletin. Check it out. Matt, thanks for joining. So 2 things today. One, if you're listening to this on Friday, you're a Patreon. You're listening to this on Friday. There was a big, we'll call it a tempest in a teapot that happened today. Today was the deadline for DC United and all MLS teams to release what their roster compliance setup was going to be. Who's on roster? What is their designation? Are they international? Are they green card? Blah, blah, blah. So it came out today. All along so far this preseason, it's been understood that DC United was pursuing a 2 DP, 4 under 22, 2.5 GAM model, one of the 2 models. Is this boring? Yes, it's super boring. And although if you're a Patreon, this is maybe up your alley. So that was what everyone was told. That was what was going to happen. And then today we got a release that said, actually, no, it's 3 DPs, 3 under 22s, no GAM, which is a problem only insofar as that we only have 1 DP actually on the roster, 1 dead weight spot and 1 empty spot, and apparently no free game. Everyone got very upset and freaked out by this very quickly. I was one of them. We found out today through the team, through Allie in the front office, said that is not the case. We can switch at any time. We're keeping our eyes open to what we need in the summer. I'll read the quote versus just sort of like freestyle what he said. He said, "We're open and monitoring possibilities. We'll be aggressive in the market and see where this takes us. We're not closing the door on either model, and the summer will dictate which direction we move in, whether that's a 3rd DP or adding under 22 initiatives." And then as follow-up, the league just said you have to commit right now, but you can change it at a later date. So everyone take a deep breath. It's all right. So not a big deal. Matt, you also heard it this morning, and you also were in sort of the I'm just going to assume that everything is going to be all right phase. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, with MLS, you can always sort of assume err on the side of incompetence rather than malice. But in this case, or maybe err on the side of low effort, right? Like, did they work hard and make sure this was exactly accurate? Because it basically tells you less as a fan. Like, it's nice that they're giving out these things, and for once, we can actually see who's on the supplemental roster, who the international spots are. Like, that's actually massive progress, right? It's circa like 2 years ago, but the fact that they're just we didn't bother to get the information right about our intentions is like, okay, well,
it was very Calvin Ball. People used to just talk about Calvin Ball, MLS rules being basically whatever made the Galaxy better was part of the rules, and then whatever made them least. I think that they were really not fans of sharing the information about supplemental roster, is because there was a time where they made $22,500 a year, like when I started watching. So they were probably like, you know what, we're just going to keep that one a secret. That's for us to know, and that person to live with his 4 roommates in the DC area in 2007.
Yeah.
So that's that. We don't have to worry about that anymore. But we do have a game coming up this weekend, coming off the backs of what some people called, certainly not me, called a must-win game in week 1, where we did not do that against Toronto FC, the reigning wooden spoon and potential candidate for next year. But we came away with a draw. Go read Matt's thoughts on All Points Bulletin to talk about the recap for Toronto. But if you had to give a short synopsis of what you took out of that game, what was it? Your score, by the way, your ratings were pretty brutal. I feel like I read. Is that a 10, right? 1 out of 10?
Yeah. Well,
they're pretty brutal.
Pretty. I think I came away. I think the longer I go, this is just true about DC United in general. The longer I go from having watched the team play, I feel a little more optimistic, a little better about things. But so coming out of that, I was, I was especially. I think some people thought I was too hard on Kim, certainly, but I don't know. I could try to defend those ratings, but basically, I thought it was disappointing that several players that I was hoping for, maybe I'd talked myself into, Pirani for one, who I'm, certainly.
We're on the polar ends of the Pirani spectrum. I think we're
Yeah,
we're the counterweights.
exactly right. So I like Bronny, and I like to think I have elaborate arguments for why he still has potential, even now. But it was disappointing. I was definitely disappointed in Bronny's game and Schnegg, and so forth. On the other hand, because you said to be concise, and I'm already failing at
It's
that. But
okay. Don't worry about it.
I did like that. Lassane is trying something new and like trying to switch things up, and there's a lot of coaches who just sort of they have their way of playing and they just try to jam that through, and can't do that in MLS, at least not when you're, especially not with DC United. Really, any MLS team, you have to sort of take what you can get and try to adapt to like the weird roster situation that you have at whatever team you're on. So I like that he's trying to change things up, and we're not just sort of doing things like last year, except with slightly different people. So
I think that's fair. So I made on the prediction show, the last show before the season, we made 3 very specific predictions and 1 wild one. And one of my specific predictions is this team will immediately or very soon have 2 goalkeepers on the substitute bench. That happened week 1. The other one that was wild was talking about potential who's gone first, Troy or Christian. And this is why I even mentioned this. So DC United is trying something new. It is a system that by its very nature de-emphasizes the single point of attack, the single fulcrum of attack, and that's fine. People have been asking for that. It's stylistic diversity and sort of versatility is good. It enables you to play against different opponents. It enables you to change your style as the game dictates, and not just be like, well, we got mash that one button we got. But what if this goes 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games, 12 games where we are trying to build this new structure out of the cooking with the parts we got, and Benteke's got 3 goals and he's not touching the ball at all. So that is why I thought, because all the conversation ahead of the season was like, we're gonna, we're working on some things. We're in the lab. We're gonna do some new stuff. And Benteke was, when his press avail was like, yeah, we got a lot of new guys. I don't know who any of them are. The star will be the team. Like every interview, he did a quote that was like, all right, he's not loving this. He doesn't. This is not the best situation for him. So that's why I said that. But to your point, you got to try something new, or else why change the players? Why not just roll back exactly the same roster?
well, and Toronto kind of did that. And one thing I think I failed to anticipate about the game, and I only kind of thought of afterwards, after the fact, is that when you don't change your roster, it doesn't mean, it means you're not getting better. And I think for DC United fans, we're sort of both impatient about getting better and suspicious that the team's not trying hard enough to get better. And in Toronto's case, though, they had a lot of cohesion, I thought, and even though they had a new coach, they played well. They made a bad mistake, of course, for the goal, but overall, I thought they looked a little less talented, but more cohesive, I guess. And actually, you would assume that from looking at the fact that they retained most of their players, they knew each other, whereas DC still had a lot of turnover. And as part of my this other sort of newsletter thing I'm doing, where I just show kind of big picture stats on the league, I subjected myself to the highlights from every other MLS game, which was interesting just because it's like, man, a lot of mistakes teams are making, like playing out of the back and so forth.
We have company from that. Our back line having challenges moving the ball out. We're not alone. It's a week 1 new backline problem.
Exactly.
So, all right. So we'll put that in the past. We got a point out of 3. Probably would have hoped for 3, but we're moving on. We're going on the road against Greg Berhalter's Chicago Fire, who last week probably didn't go the way they were hoping either. A 4-2 loss to Columbus. So I think I saw that scoreline. I saw sort of, I've been reading the press for the Fire in the offseason talking about new day. We're making smart DP moves that everyone's thinking, all right, this is Jonathan Bamba is a great player. That's one of the best DPs they've signed. Forgetting, maybe. Well, I mean, they've had a really bad run of picking DPs. So that's since Blanco. I don't remember one that was really, really a home run.
I think Schweinsteiger was pretty good.
Yeah. Certainly the challenge there is the weight of expectations based on a long track record. It's like Lampard and at New York City FC. It's probably a little bit better, but still very at the end. Anyway, so we go into Chicago. I want to sort of get your perspective on both. What does this Fire team look like, or how, if you watched at least their highlights last week, what are you expecting? What are you looking out for?
So interesting thing about the Fire is that they're in kind of a somewhat similar spot to DC United in that they were bad last year, In fact, we felt DC was really bad. They were 30 points, so significantly worse, 10 points worse than DC. And they've gotten a lot of positive press, I guess, because Berhalter Doyle, who sort of, I think, has a big presence in like the national pundit space, likes Berhalter. They brought in Berhalter and they got Jonathan Bamba, a $3.5 million, I think, transfer playing left wing. So he's their new DP. They have an existing number 9 DP who had 10 goals last year, Kuipers. So, and 10 goals is good. It's a lot more than I've scored in MLS. But like for a DP number 9, not the best. But of course, the team around him was pretty bad last year. So they've switched out a lot of players. But when I went back, I had to go back and look at my sort of charts for like transfer spending. So John, little pop quiz, like who spent more over the last 2 transfer windows, DC United or Chicago Fire on transfer fees?
I would have thought the Fire over their Swiss international washout. I would assume it was them. But
well, I'm just saying the last 2 windows.
Yeah.
I'm not counting. So like, not counting whatever however Shaqiri was being paid and all that, right? Because we're not appraising the ownership. Like Chicago's ownership has put a lot of money into the Shaqiri situation and all that. Not that they got anything out of it.
All right. Well, then we'll assume this is one of those pop quiz questions where the answer is the opposite one. We'll assume it's DC United.
It's DC United by a hair is the answer, right? Like it's like they're quite similar in terms of like $6 million each. So Chicago spent a little more on the offense. DC spent a little more on the defense and goalkeeping. So they didn't spread it around quite as much. The other thing that Ali Mackay has done is he's spread these transfer spending across a lot of different players, possibly because he inherited a roster that needed lots and lots of help. It's a little more focused. I think they had 5 or 6 major players as opposed to like 8 or something like that for DC. So, and last week, it's actually, I would actually recommend, like the highlights are pretty comedic. If they're worth watching just because they had, so Berhalter wants them to play out of the back, like the sort of possession style that I think not familiar to what we've seen from when he, I think, first took over the national team and was also trying to play out of the back. There was like a bad game against Mexico where we got burned from that. Well, that happened this game where they had 2 different goals where the Crew tackled a Chicago player and then immediately scored. Different players each time, and then the third of the Crew's 4 goals was an own goal that was just a calamity with the center defender. So it's pretty brutal. I think they actually had more XG than the Crew. And they generated, 1.8 XG against a good Crew team. So
yeah,
you can spin it as like, hey, they did really well. But so they gave up these goals. So they gave 2 goals to the Crew's press. I'm not saying they're as good as the Crew, but DC United also presses. So that's another goal was Diego Rossi sort of doing his Benteke impression, just jumping up and heading the ball in while defenders aren't close enough to him to do anything about that. So, there's some reason to think that the ways that DC likes to attack teams could be open. On the other hand, their goals that they scored were both sort of started. Jonathan Bamba, their new DP, got 2 assists, and like the first one especially, in transition, Gutman, their left back, picks his head up, fires like a quick ball out to the sideline where Bamba is. He brings it in, cuts it back to Gutierrez, who scores, right? So it's like, okay, I could and Gutierrez is like the delayed runner, you know what I mean? Like, so the Crew's defensive line is back, and then Gutierrez comes in and scores. It's like exactly like a 2024 DC United goal where
I can see it. I can visualize that happening to us.
Yeah, just as Click and Jackson Hopkins are coming into the frame, like the ball's going in. So I think each side can think that like, oh yeah, we've got now the problem that Chicago has is that Gutierrez got suspended for this game. So he scored both their goals from the number 10 position. I don't know. It's not like we're experts in their roster. On the other hand, they're one of the players who gave up the ball to the press for an easy goal was like a 19-year-old homegrown like defensive midfielder. And I don't know because MLS injury reports are terrible, but like they might have their intended starter back. Like they had a guy hurt and that's why they were playing him there, I think. So
it's funny to me that Omar Gonzalez is a supplemental spot player on this roster. That's kind of just funny based on the fact that he is 34 years old.
It's the circle of life.
The circle, right? You once made no money on the front end, and then eventually you make no money on the back end.
Yeah, yeah.
He made it in the middle. So I'm trying to think, who's their goalkeeper? Who is
their goalkeeper is Brady, right? Chris Brady.
Homegrown.
Yeah, U.S. youth national team player. So there's still people who are excited about his potential, like because he was the one who replaced Slanina when he left, and some people are like, oh, he's because he had a good season when he was 18. His shot stopping numbers. So I do a lot with like the shot stopping numbers on my blog because it's a fun stat, and his shot stopping numbers not good last year. But as we know, when you have a bad defense in front of you, it makes your shots up. I always felt like Bono looked worse in those stats than he actually played. I wonder if it wasn't true for him as well, but
all right. So that I'm just very curious. It'll be interesting to see, these. It's a similar matchup from this perspective of Chicago will be on the receiving end of a pressing offense once again. Yep. DC United will be wondering how exposed are they once again, either on transition or through long diagonal balls over their midfield to the wingers. It could go exactly the same. It's a really kind of weird scenario to have happened so early in the season. As teams are figuring themselves out, it could still go different ways. There may have been more than one club in the bag for Troy in the preseason that we're going to try something different. Maybe they revert to 24. Who knows? It's going to be. It's very hard to this early in the season be prescriptive about sort of how we think game state will go. Even more than normal, but I would say even worse with a new team basically in the second game of the season.
I mean, they may not do this whole Schnegg as a winger thing on the road, for example, or with the matchups. One thing that's different is that Bamba, who's seems like their best player now, plays on the left. So last week we had Bernadeschi on the right, and he was matched up on with the Schnegg, Servania side of the field. This time it's going to be against Herrera, so you kind of like that matchup a lot better, especially because Herrera was saying in an interview that I'm playing more defense this year,
which is not what you want to hear with a player of his offensive caliber skills. I think I would say
I was surprised.
Yeah. I think that is. It's actually kind of funny if you think about it. If that's true, Troy is looking at two of his most naturally gifted, talented players and saying, our style is going to not play into your special skill set. We're not. I don't know that may be unfair, but saying Benteke, you should get 75 balls to your head per match because you are the best player in the entire world at doing this. And Herrera, we're saying you might have to be pinned back a little bit more than you were last time because actually, you're the one that drops back. Stegg's going to be the one that goes for it. I think that could be game dictated. Like you said, it could change based on who is left back or right back for the team that they're playing. I want to see him going forward as much as possible. That is why he is the best right back in the league, in my opinion.
That's what I was expecting too. And I mean, it's not going to do him any favors trying to get to the All-Star game if he's not racking up assists. But I do think that if I tried to explain it, or try to defend it, it would be that what we saw last week and the Mark Machado Substack showed, like, in possession, he is sort of still a factor, like coming forward and trying to do triangles with Borsey now over there. So we need better possession, better poise in midfield. And he was very sort of imperious against Toronto. He was like the only DCI player who looked totally in control and totally secure on the ball. So it's possible that that's what Troy's thinking. Cause I mean, Jared Stroud can still cross, at least when he's in the game. And we'll see about Peglo and all that.
Peglo and Stroud. We asked Troy today what the status was. My opinion is if you're asked that question and the coach immediately starts talking about, but by next week for sure they'll be in, don't expect them to start. You may see them for a few minutes. I think unlikely both of them or one of them will not start. That's usually how coach speak goes when you start talking about next week. Otherwise you just say they're ready to go. We practiced today, ready to go. Before we wrap it up, and I get your prediction, I want to talk about. So we have difference of opinion on Pirani. I think we could. I think we should discuss that at a future date. We'll give Pirani 5 games this season as the starter, and then we'll sort of revisit our position on the matter. What I think I read your wrap up. I want to know what you think about Leal. I think I had a different view than some of the other analysts that had looked at him and said, actually, I thought I liked he was much calmer on the ball. he was less aggressive on the ball, but he was not being pushed off the ball, and he was able to work a few. Well, I could think of like 2 or 3 opportunities where he's passing and moving when they triangle with Benteke or Baji. And that was not a function of the rest of the game. We weren't seeing that sort of like stationary pass move and go on. So what did you see out of him in a very short period of time, 30 minutes, 25 minutes?
Yeah, so I definitely, despite being a Pirani partisan, I also was hoping for Leal to provide creativity and so forth. And so you're right, like he was, I mean, definitely ball secure, but my take on it, and if I'd had a little more time, I would have gone back and rewatched his minutes because other people did have a different impression. My sense, and I was sitting there in the stadium feeling impatient, wanting to see more forward momentum. And so, yes, he didn't lose the ball, but I didn't see sort of the cutting edge that I wanted to see as far as like helping unlock. Because really, in that central midfield area, or the attacking midfield area, the thing that we've didn't have last season, even Click would usually be working on like towards the sideline, right? Like, and he would help with connecting to Stroud in particular over there. So being able to play through the midfield, and the team tried with Pirani and it totally didn't work. He was just not getting the ball out quickly enough and getting kind of run over by Toronto's midfield. So
he was
I don't
lifting
know.
weights this offseason. It wasn't for lack of trying. He posted enough times where he was lifting 5-pound dumbbells. So it's not like he wasn't trying.
Yeah, but I mean, part of this is like you wonder what the instructions were both to Pirani and to Leal, because it's possible after watching that from Pirani, when Leal's going in, Lassane is like, listen,
Enough of this.
hold
Hold the
on to
ball,
it,
please.
work it around. Let's get Herrera forward and like try to work that way, because Herrera did get forward more when Leal was on, and so what I didn't see though was like the sort of, I don't know, I just was hoping to be impressed by that sort of, I don't know, sort of expected assist type stuff as opposed to simply a Martin Rodriguez style performance, right?
Who was it that called him Martin Rodriguez on 1/13 of the salary? Was that Mark? I think somebody tweeted that. I was like, that's at least that. At least he's not expensive. At least this was our Moneyball DP
Yeah, I
without
mean,
discount DP.
right, but and so right now he's a Moneyball like veteran player, but I'd like to see some more. And I think in the preseason he got on the score sheet in various ways, both with like an actual assist in the first game, I think, and then that weird Dodson own goal situation that was still Leal, like, so still hopeful that we'll see that under better circumstances. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this goes.
All right, so let's do the thing. What do you see the score being here? And are they still playing at Soldier Field? They are, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
So in the cavernous, quasi-empty Soldier Field, what do you see the score being?
So I'm definitely not going with a clean sheet.
No.
But for either team after the way their defense is played. So I mean, I think because Gutierrez is out, I'll go for like a 2-2. Like,
I was going to say that.
Roll it back.
As a guest, you get to keep that. Okay, that's fine. I'll go 2-2 is where I was going to go. I'll go 2-1. I'll go 2-1. I'll go 2-1 DC United.
Excellent. All right.
I'll say on the road, and I think Benteke both goals. I think for all the effort to diversify the offense, Benteke is still going to have 95% of the goals. They just won't be able to shake that because they have not signed a pure goal scorer. All right, Matt, I appreciate it. I think 2-2 is the more realistic outcome. So, but let's all watch and find out. I've written 2 things. One, I want them to have DCU radio for away games. I would love that. I much prefer Dave, even if the homerism is sometimes doesn't. I like it. I'm a fan of it, even though it is what it is. Totally. 2, I think you need this more than most. MLS needs like all 22 coverage like NFL does. Can you imagine if you could just dial up, give me all the Pirani touches? Like they have that access, obviously, on the team. They've got that.
Yeah, like the Y.
You should be able to buy into that. You should be able to that should be part of your Substack. Like pay $5 a month so that I can get this like MLS level caliber scouting cameras. That'd be great, wouldn't it? I want that.
Yeah, it would. I mean, anything more that we can get. I mean, even the stats that we have, because through FBref, are not as good as what the team's analysts have. And I would even like that, like passes per defensive action, like stuff like that.
I think that's all. That'll be the next when they do the sort of beginning of the year conversation with. Sometimes they used to do like a media conversation, like what how can we make your job better as fan supported media. We'll say, give us the good stuff, man. Give us some credentials for the very expensive data that you're getting. I think that would make us better at our
Totally.
jobs. Please. All right. So again, All Points Bulletin, Substack. You don't even need a password. You can just go add your email and get it sent to you.
I think so.
Check it. Maybe not, or just figure it out otherwise.
Let me know.
Thanks for joining, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We will be back, same as normal, on Monday night. I will be in a hotel room in Indianapolis, so the quality is going to be really good, as you can expect when I'm started to do my Road Dog podcast appearances. But we should hopefully have 3 points to talk about on the weekend against Chicago. If not, I was gone last week, so Ted and Brian had like a quasi-optimistic show. I'll be back. We'll have the balance of the force will be restored, and everyone will have their voice represented. So we'll see you guys Monday night at 8:30 as per normal, and hopefully, and I'll probably do Instagram Live at halftime during the game like I always do. So check us out there. Thank you, Patreons. If you're listening to this, you're paying Patreon, so we appreciate you, and I'll be back with another special show just for you next Friday.
Vamos.
There we go. Wait, something went wrong. Why did something go